What is up YouTube, and welcome to this Utopia ending explained video. This is the latest show from Prime Video and is a remake of the British version of the incredibly brilliant cult TV show of the same name. But as we know, British shows don't last that long and it only had 2 seasons. Now the American version does feel a bit sterile and less kind of kooky than the original version, but I really enjoyed it. I didn't even plan on doing a video on it, but I just had to talk about this really fun show. It's created by Gillian Flynn, the writer of Gone Girl, and David Fincher was supposed to be attached to it as it was originally going to be on HBO. So there will be spoilers in this video, and if you haven't checked it out, then do be warned and go and watch it as it is a superbly fun show. So the story starts with a young couple finding a comic in a house left to them by one of their relatives. This comic is called Utopia, and it is the sequel to the original Dystopia. The latter having been thought to predict many global epidemics and pandemics, and it feels so eerily poignant that this show came out during a global pandemic. They instantly realised that this comic was sought after and worth a lot, so they decided to go out and try and sell it at a Comic-Con, and this is where it all seems to go wrong, as a group try to get the comic who are, for the lack of better of a term, a Utopia truther, and they all agree to go and buy it, but the young couple make a list of those wanting to bid on the comic, leading creepy assassins to take them out, and each person who has seen the comic, as it is basically a roadmap for how the population will end, but this is all a misdirect. The comic was actually written by main character Jessica Hyde's father, and she herself was the protagonist. The comic is about Jessica's life and how she was kept inside a yellow house and fed cookies, and she was also given presents in giant crates which she never opened. In reality, she was kept by a group known as the Harvest. This Harvest was a group that came out of an organisation set up post 9/11 to create biological warfare threats, but was soon taken over from the inside, and they were then known as the Harvest. Jessica was experimented on by the group and her father as new viruses and pathogens were tested on her as she was fed cookies. This was all at least looked on as a great life by Jessica, as she has no idea really what was going on. These cookies we saw were actually like the T-flu, which was given to one of the twins, and the flu was on a round disc with a QR code, hence being one of the cookies. Jessica's father was actually gassing her and giving her presents, but these presents were poor children bought around the globe. They were mainly twins, so they have another, as Christy said, until she was able to escape with the help of someone called Artemis. Artemis also managed to sneak Jessica's father out of her home, but he was put in a psychiatric hospital, only for him to draw Utopia and give it to someone who was working there shortly before the place was burned down, with only the father and Rainn Wilson's Dr. Mike surviving. The two obviously survive as they're so incredibly important, and really they were both put there by people from the Harvest. The group is led by Mr. Rabbit, who apparently tried to sell swine flu to the Chinese, and then they reneged on the deal, but he released it anyway and was devoured and branded with a Chinese logo. It seems Mr. Rabbit is actually 2 people. It is the faux Homeland Security woman Milner and Dr. Christie, played by John Cusack. This is why Milner has the Chinese logo on her at the end, and it's very curious. Their plan was to keep testing a Thanos-style plan to reduce the population before settling on the virus that creates a flu and T-like spots on the face. However, this was what we thought originally. Their true plan is to actually convince the world that this flu is a major threat to get them to have the vaccine that Christie's company makes. The vaccine has a hidden code in it that will make anyone who takes it sterile, unable to have children. And the Harvest and Dr. Christie says that this will actually last for 3 generations. There were clues about this radical plan, as the Harvest mantra seems to be asking what someone did to deserve their place in this crowded world, and at some point while making the virus and experimenting on Jessica, they must have turned into a darkest time like Greta Thunberg. The Harvest operate out of a place called Home, which is where the presents, which are the children, are kept, and if they aren't used as martyrs or other people to try and push the agenda forward, well, they are trained to be assassins like Arby and the ones we saw later in the episode. Now, they do this whole plan to try and, or at least they have a false flag, to try and get the flu out there and convince the world that the whole vaccine actually works. But in reality, they used twins who were one of the presents, and what they did was they swapped them over so that the person who didn't have the flu was given the vaccine. However, as the plans that Milner had for Jessica returning unravel, it becomes clear that she is the true Mr. Rabbit, as she's keeping Jessica's father there in a locked basement, and we can see him working on an all-new comic, which will open up for Season 2. It seems she allowed him to write the second comic to get Jessica to return home, making her think it was all a safe place, only to run right back into the Harvest trap. Milner has a different plan to Dr. Christie, as she seems to want to make humans think the same things and all toe the same line. Instead of reducing the population, she seems to want to create a hive mind so that humans stop having self-destructive properties and kind of putting people in poverty and destroying the environment and just generally being self-destructive. The key to this seems to be in Jessica's blood. This sets up a potential Harvest civil war between Christie and Milner in Season 2. Now, the group who investigated all this are now on the run, and of course they know too much, so we'll most likely pick up with them moving into Season 2, and this was a very complex series. The show twisted and turned so much, but here what I've discussed is the main core of the show. The whole plan of Harvest was to not only make the world sterile, but they want to make humans think the same things. They want everyone to kind of be the same person, and or at least not the same person, but think what the Harvest want them to think, so that it doesn't kind of ruin this. And this is pretty much the main core of the show. I could have gone into a lot more detail about the entire scene by scene like in my other videos, but I feel like this was a bit more of a different way of doing things, and let me know what you think. So if you like the video, please do drop a like down below, and please do subscribe with notifications on, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.